Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. I'm back with another Slimline card. Had a little extra time today to finish voiceovers and editing and all that fun stuff. So for this card, I am using the Simon Says Stamp Mod Stripe Stencil. And I have it in one of my splat boxes here, and I'm spraying the back of it. With a stencil like this, it doesn't matter which side you're using. So spraying it with some iCraft PIXIE spray. It's a very low tack spray that is meant for stencils. I've shown it in another recent video. And the biggest takeaway with this is you want to use it either outside or in a really well ventilated area. I've got a window in here and an HVAC system in the house and all that stuff. So you spray it, you let it sit for a minute or two, and then it's just a nice tacky coverage, and then it'll just stay in place. So I can reuse this usually a good couple times, sometimes more depending, before I just wash it with just hand soap in the sink. Same as when I usually wash my stencils anyway. When they're really inky and I don't want to wipe them off, I'll just wash them in the sink with some hand soap. So anywho, placed it onto some Desert Storm cardstock, and because this is a slimline card, that's why I also used the PIXIE spray, because I'm going to be repositioning this stencil so that I can cover this entire piece of cardstock, which right now is, I think, a little bit bigger than a slimline card. It's about 8.5 by 3 or 3 3/4 or 4 inches something. I'll trim it down later, but I put it in my Waffle Flower water media mat because I also plan on doing a bunch of splatter. And I used some Post-it tape along the bottom portion there because I didn't want to get ink over the edge of the stencil because I want to, continue this pattern. And then I am blending on several Distress Oxide inks. Now, I've shown this in many videos and I've talked about this with Distress Oxides because they have pigments in them. They show up on dark cardstock, and that's great. But the cool thing with Distress Oxide, there's something about these pigments and these inks specifically, the way they look on a Kraft cardstock like this Desert Storm is really neat. It almost glows. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's just, I always fall in love with Oxides even more when I use them on Desert Storm cardstock. So I did my blending, and then I removed the stencil, and then I quickly wiped the stencil off because I'm going to be moving around some colors and I didn't want to pick up all that ink on the stencil with my blending foams. And I also wiped off my little water media mat while I was at it, so I got rid of all that excess ink. And then I put the cardstock back in the water media mat, and then I'm just lining the stencil up. This is a stencil, it's not necessarily meant to, be a repeating pattern, but because of the type of stencil it is, it's pretty easy to line up and make a repeating pattern like this. The only thing I would do differently is I fought with the very bottom portion because, the stencil's hanging over the water media mat. I should have put the cardstock at the top there, let that hang over the water media mat. And then the stencil could have been flat and it just would have been easier. It wasn't the end of the world. It's funny when, I get to editing things and I start looking at it and it's like my later self is trying to tell my previous self the easier way to do things. So that's the bonus of it. At least I can tell you guys that. So I just kept going and adding more of these Distress Oxide ink colors. I'll have them all listed with the supplies, but I was using Squeezed Lemonade, Abandoned Coral, Picked Raspberry, Seedless Preserves, and Peacock Feathers. And just kind of a rainbow, of colors, but just, I don't know, colors I'm drawn to at the moment. So blended all those on, remove the stencil, and that's where the magic is. You can see this repeating pattern. Now the blend obviously isn't perfect. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to add some more ink on top of it, because that's just another thing. You can just keep layering these colors. I basically kept the colors I'm just adding with just the blending tools to the same areas where I had stenciled them, and I'm not really pressing my blending tools into the ink pads much because I obviously don't want to have solid ink coverage because that'll just cover up all the stenciled pattern. So I just went along and added that, and I gotta say, the whole time I was editing this, it's driving me insane. It looks so much worse on camera than it did in person. I don't know why my camera does this to me, but this blend looks horrible. It looks like I did a horrible job. It's not going to matter in the end, and you can see it in the pictures at the end and on my blog, but right now, this looks horrible. I don't know why my camera picks it up like this, because it didn't look like this in real life. Things were blended a lot smoother, and it just didn't have that really blotchy look. I don't know. Anyway, it's really bugging me, but with everything. You stick with it till the end. And if in real life it's looking bad, you can always, obviously blend it out more, or, walk away from it, come back to it later, that sort of thing. All the advice I've given in a bunch of videos. But yeah, in real life, this looked a lot smoother. So I'm also adding a bunch of splatter. It's another thing I love about the Oxide inks is being able to add splatter and the color shows up on top of other colors. So I was just smushing the ink pads right onto my water media mat and then picking up that ink with a wet paintbrush and then just splattering on that color. And same as what I was doing with the blending is I was keeping the bulk of the splatter of each color with each color that was blended, but then also moving the splatter around because 1, it's splatter, and 2, the colors look really fun on top of each other. So I just kept going along, picking up, using every single one of those ink pads I'd used, smushing it onto my water media mat, picking it up with a wet paintbrush, splattering it on, and then I was like cleaning my paintbrush in between colors, obviously, and then just wiping off the color in between. So again, this is why I love the water media mat. If I haven't said it enough times in this video or said it in previous videos, this is one of my favorite tools, craft mats, etc. I adore this, especially because it's silicone. So I can just take it when it gets really, really messy, or I've really covered it with a ton of just everything. I just take it to the sink because it's just, it's so flexible. I can just take it to the sink, or actually the one time I literally put it in my shower and hosed it down that way because I had it completely, covered in, ink and paint and all that stuff. So wonderful, wonderful. Love it. So did all my splatter, set that aside so it can all dry. And then, this time I just wiped it down. I didn't need to take it to the sink or anything like that. So wipe down my little media mat. It is recommended that you store it flat. I don't, honestly. I just roll it up and stick it under my desk. And it's been fine, but manufacturer suggested that it be stored flat. So I assume if you really put something heavy on top of it, you could put permanent creases in it possibly, but I don't put anything on top of it. I just roll it up and store it under my desk. So anywho, let this dry, and then I trimmed it down to slightly smaller than what my Slimline card will be. So this got trimmed down to roughly 3¼ by 8¼ inches. The blend still doesn't look the greatest. It looks better than it did, because the inks are dry, but again, it's going to look fine when it's done. And then the whole kind of main focus of my card, I was actually inspired by one of the previous Slimline cards I did, the one with the panda and the ton of sentiments. I really enjoyed making that, and it just got my brain going. And then when I was flipping through my sets, I was looking at this just because Word Mix 2 stamp set, which I've done other videos using this. And I have this huge pile of sentiments that I had done in a previous video. And I had stamped them with black ink on white cardstock, and I'd also white heat embossed those sentiments on black cardstock. And then I'd used the coordinating wafer die to die cut them. And I only used, a few here and there on different cards. And then I just keep all of those sentiments just in the packaging. So then next time I go to use it, I grab sentiment. So I was originally was thinking I was going to fill this card with all these sentiments. And you can see how I was just moving everything around and kind of figuring out how I wanted to do this, which ones I wanted to use and whatnot. And then I decided it was bugging me because I didn't want to cover up as much of the background because I really liked the colors and the pattern and the splatter. So I ended up trimming down how many I was using and just stuck to a few of the sentiments. And then obviously the bulk of them go back in the packaging for the next time I want to use this set. I've got a bunch of pre-stamped sentiments, which is perfect. So I put those back. I only stuck with these few sentiments for the front, and I adhered them all with some thin 3D foam squares. So they just give it that little extra bit of dimension. So adhered all of those to the card front, and then my card base is heavyweight white cardstock that I am going to trim down to 7 inches by 8½ inches. And then I'm going to score this with my Teflon bone folder and my little score buddy. And I'll score it at 3½ inches, so it'll be a 3½ inch by 8½ inch Slimline card. So got that scored, and then I'd set aside a few more sentiments from that Just Because Word Mix 2 to put on the inside, just kind of tie it all together. So I'm going to adhere those into place with some Kraft Tacky adhesive. And this is where the, you know, the beauty of the Slimline card is. Because even with all these like big sentiments on the inside, there's still tons of space to write to the recipient. So adhered those to the inside. And then I'm going to adhere the card front to the card base with Simon's Big Mama foam tape, which is thinner than basic foam tape. So it gives the dimension, but not a bunch of bulk. So adhere that to my card base. And as always, you could leave it here, but I'm going to add bling. Can't not add bling. So I have the Studio Claudia Crystal Rainbow Confetti. I used these in a recent video too. So they're, again, like kind of forefront in my mind. And they just, the colors go perfectly with these Distress Oxide colors. It's all just meant to be. So sprinkled this rather heavily throughout the card, kind of matching the different colors of the confetti with the different areas of the background, which was just fun. So adhere those into place with dabs of the Kraft Tacky glue, just using my little embellishment wand to put these into place. And then decided again at the last second, I was like, oh, it just needs one more. just got to add one more. So added one more. And then off camera, I made a matching or a coordinating envelope to go with this from some more Doodlebug pattern paper. Doodlebug pattern paper is just perfect for like all my cards. So I made the envelope with the Trinity Stamps Slimline Envelope Builder wafer die set that I've shown in other videos. And then I'll link to it like I linked to everything. So I've got my envelope, got my card. I purposely chose this like Kraft pattern paper from the Doodlebug pack, and I'll have a link to that too, because it's kind of unassuming, and so, you know, the brown, and then you'll open it up and it'll be like that fun rainbow goodness. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list with links to all the supplies used, and then in my blog post I'll have the pictures, picture links, all that stuff. So if you are interested, you can check that all out in the description box below the video. Thank you all so much for watching, for commenting, for thumbs upping, sharing, subscribing, all of it. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!